all-boys choir. Now, we ran through just now almost a glossy brochure. This is the official take on this terrible prison over there in the north of Ireland, Maghaberry Prison. And it sounds almost attractive, doesn't it? But it's far from a pleasant place. And this was flagged to us a couple of years ago by the late, a dear friend of ours, and the late Chuck McLaughlin of the Irish Freedom Committee. And today we're very pleased to speak to a gentleman who's actually been inside Maghaberry Prison, and that's Mr. Donelly. He was sent inside that place following an incident at the Raytheon factory in Derry, which is one of these places which produces missiles for other countries. It's an arms factory. This occurred a while ago, back in 2006, I think. But the group which were called on by the press at the time, the Raytheon 9, were arrested at the scene. And whilst being taken into court in handcuffs, Mr. Donelly turned to wave at some supporters when police officers of the Police Service of Northern Ireland bundled him to the ground, assaulted him, and carried him, or almost manhandled him into the court. Although they actually charged him with assault of three officers, which is talking about turning the tables. But he was later acquitted of charges relating to the Raytheon factory break-in. So there we are, that was an achievement. He was acquitted of charges relating to the Raytheon factory break-in. But Mr. Donelly had to appear in court again to face the triple assault charge. It was the trumped-up charge, and bravely faced a long-term prison term. Fortunately, a journalist from the Irish News, Mr. Seamus McKinney, witnessed the event and came forward, and the presiding judge, Judge Bates, said he had been very impressed by Mr. McKinney's evidence, and quite rightly, threw the case out. Just hours after winning that court battle on assault charges against members of the Police Service of Northern Ireland, Mr. Donelly was stopped by the police again. And says that night I was in Foyle Street in central Derry, and with three members of the Raytheon 9. The Police Service of Northern Ireland pulled up, and one of them told me to get on the footpath so he could search me. I was pushed face down into the ground, and one came up, down with his knee, and snapped my arm. Worse was yet to come. Mr. Donelly was again charged with assaulting an officer, and presiding over that case was District Judge Barney McCallum. He acknowledged that there were a number of discrepancies in the evidence given by police officers during the trial, adding it surprises me somewhat that no one took seriously enough Mr. Donelly's protestations that his arm was broken. He pointed out in the circumstances surrounding how Mr. Donelly sustained the broken arm were unresolved and unclear before finding him guilty of assaulting but one of the officers. Mr. Donelly was given a £400 fine, but on the point of principle appealed it. Well, I'm not surprised. The appeal was unsuccessful, and he was given a 7-month custodial sentence and was sent to this high-security institution at Maghaberry. And our friend, late Charles McLaughlin, referred to it as a prisoner of war camp, which in effect it is. He was detained there for a week alongside other inmates before being moved on to Row House, the most high-security wing of the prison, reserved for Republican prisoners. What is a Republican prisoner then? Well, people will be. I'm a Republican. So the cell doors only ever opened when there was a minimum of 3 prison officers. Remembers Mr. Donelly, it was like something out of Silence of the Lambs. And we're very pleased today, hopefully, if Technical Tony has managed to sort this out, to be joined by Mr. Donelly. Hopefully you can hear us, sir.
I can indeed. Good morning.
Very good morning to you. And hopefully you've recovered from that dreadful injury to your arm.
It's still a bit disfigured, but
I think it's just unbelievable, isn't it? We've been covering the case of many people now in this past few weeks who have suffered at the hands of the system in the north of Ireland. Marion Price and Martin Corey being 2 of them. And I understand from the little introduction there that you actually served some time inside of Maghaberry Jail.
That's correct. It's the incident you described, which I received from which the doctor described as a very nasty break. It was a three-way spiral fracture. As a result of that, I was found guilty of assault and police officers, despite there not being any evidence of an assault, no marks, no bruises. And unfortunately, the system here, which I believe is rotten, imprisoned me a 7-month sentence in McGabry, which I spent 3.5 months.
Yeah.
And, the only way I can describe that prison sentence was that every single minute of every day was an absolute slog. It's just designed to grind down, and the conditions in McGabry are absolutely horrendous.
We've read this morning from the official website of the prison service in the north of Ireland. What almost sounds, Gary, like a hotel write-up when it talks about McGabry. But of course, the truth is something else, isn't it? I mean, the facilities there are absolutely awful, and more to the point, people are subjected there to almost we've been informed, almost subhuman treatment by these staff.
That's correct. If you read these prison, the brochures, you will almost, as you say, think you're in a 4-star hotel with football pitches and top of the range, equipment. The reality is that the 3.5 months I spent in McGabry, I was locked up 23 hours a day, sometimes 23.5 hours a day. You're dealing with staff who I would describe as very, very sadistic. They come from one section of the city here in the main. And, just the 3.5 months that I had been in there, within a week I was removed from the wing. I was taken to what's called an SSU, the punishment unit. I was placed in a cell next door to a guy called Robert Black. If your viewers will probably be familiar with, he was described as the most prolific child serial killer in UK and Irish history.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was a Republican prisoner, and I was placed in a cell next to this guy, and it was a deliberate message by the authorities to say, you're just basically a criminal. So, after the excuse they gave for this was that there was a death threat against me, which was clarified by everyone within the prison and out that there was no. And after a week, after I refused to eat, and after a week I was removed back to Row House,
Yes. Which is a high security unit there, isn't it?
It is indeed, yes. The controlled movement is that you will not. In the 3.5 months I've been on that landing, I had never once passed another prisoner on the landing. I had never seen the inside of another prisoner's cell. They only let you out one by one, and there was at least 3 prison officers around you and rescue.
Yeah, this isolation thing seems to be a tactic in the north of Ireland, because we read about this in the case of Marion Price, who was, kept away from other human contact for extended periods of time. And this must really sort of serve to break you down, really.
That's what it's designed to do, but if anybody has even a basic knowledge of history here in Ireland, we have the whole history of criminalisation. We have the 30 protests, hunger strikes. That is a constant battle by the British authorities and Republicans. The British will tell them that you're criminals, we will break you, and Republicans are saying we're not criminals, we're honourable people, and we won't accept the badge of criminality. And sometimes that battle gets very, very dirty and very subhuman. The decisions in McGabry at the minute is that we have prisoners on 30 protests. They're in cells, basically empty cells, excrement on the wall, excrement, maybe and urine 2 inches deep on the landings. And that's the conditions that these people have to endure. They're not, they have beards, very long beards, and they find it very difficult to get washed.
Yeah, and certainly this treatment has come to the attention of many people who represent the United Nations, and they've condemned it.
That's right. Report after report into McGabry has condemned the regime in McGabry. Even amongst what's described as ordinary decent criminals. So it's almost like death row in McGabry at the minute. There's hardly a week goes by without some prisoner taking their own absolutely a horrific place, and anyone who was unfortunate enough to be imprisoned in McGavery, or any of the officials going into McGavery, they can't deny that this place is just basically a hell.
It's a hellhole on earth.
Yeah. But we do have from time to time, and it's in there, we had David Ford, the so-called Justice Minister, for a photo shoot.
Now, he's Justice Minister for the Northern Ireland Assembly, isn't he?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah.
Basically, he's just, I would describe him as a puppet for the
Yeah. I mean, we've, this past few weeks, we've been covering the story of many people out in the north of Ireland who are imprisoned against the wishes of judiciary, where the wishes of the judiciary, the directions of the judiciary have been overruled by the Westminster Northern Ireland Secretary, who seems to be almost a dictator in many aspects.
Yes, that's correct.
Absolutely. And there is no democratic, I'll point this out to our listeners, there is no democratic accountability for this man at all. Nobody in the north of Ireland has voted for this Northern Ireland Secretary. And
that's correct, yes. But if you look at the whole Northern Ireland, so-called Northern Ireland issue, nobody has voted for the Northern Ireland state.
No.
For want of a better word.
No.
Therefore, everything that goes along with that illegal state, is undemocratic. They may put frills around it and dress it up, but the reality is that Brian Price and Martin Corey are in prison, having the due process being torn up by an English politician.
Absolutely.
Brian has been granted bail. They've used, they've used charges against Brian. Brian was granted bail on them charges, and then what they've done was they revoked their license.
Yeah.
And she had been pardoned, yet the English say that they can't, they couldn't find the pardon, that it had probably been shredded. So the whole system here is rotten to the core.
You can't believe that, can you? And we've been in communication with a lawyer, Mr. Simon Pook, who has flagged these cases to us. And some of these cases they almost read like something from a fairy tale book, really,
That's correct. For a country that talks about democracy and justice and that, what also you have here in the north of Ireland